Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello and welcome to a special After Dark episode of our 200th edition of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I guess not edition, but episode, right?
Same difference.
Same difference, I suppose. So we have a special treat tonight to talk to everyone about. It's a movie that was filmed 1980. It's an American science fantasy comedy film, although some of us might take issue with the comedy part.
It was might.
Well, I mean, it was intended to be comedy. How funny it was or not, that's what we'll get into here. But anyway, it was written and directed by William Sachs, shot on a very low budget. The film stars 1980 Playboy Playmate of the Year Dorothy Stratten, who was murdered by her husband shortly after the film's release. And I thought it was due to him having watched it.
Oh, God.
Sorry, but actually, no, we'll get into that. But it's got a number of homages to various science fiction mainstays like Star Trek, Star Wars, and Alien. And it also pokes fun at the Western genre, as well as motorcycle clubs. We'll get into that also.
Pokes fun at everything.
Now, interestingly enough, it did win the Audience Award at the 1983 Brussels International Festival of Fantasy Film. And my understanding is it has a bit of a cult following. But let's see. There's, interestingly, towards the end of the film, there is a film within the film that's viewed by the characters in Galaxina. And that is a clip from a 1960 Eastern Bloc sci-fi film called First Spaceship on Venus. The clip is used because First Spaceship on Venus was a Crown International picture when first released in the United States. And Galaxina, of course, is a Crown International picture as well. So without further ado, I guess we can get into it. And maybe, I don't know, Seth, do you want to kind of walk us through the plot, and I'll throw some pictures up on the screen as you're...
Were we going to introduce ourselves?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bill. Well, it's been 200 episodes.
Yeah, they should know us by now. But all right, I'm
but
Bill.
if you don't,
I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Seth.
Jenna.
And for some reason, it says Time King under my name.
like that's a coincidence with
I must
you.
have been playing with something. Anyway, so let's get into it.
There was a new option in StreamYard for choosing your title, and I have chosen one as well.
Oh, Captain Butt. All right. I like
What? Oh, boy.
to make sure everybody can see that. Captain Butt. Captain Butt was the captain in the episode, played by Avery Schreiber. So anyway, yeah, Seth, if you want to walk us through it, I'll throw some pics up on the screen.
All right. So though Bill said comedy, I think Jenna pointed out to me earlier that this is much more parody.
Right.
And if you think about Spaceballs, there's a lot there to compare it to. I'm not going to... It's not a good movie. We're not going to go there. But it might be bad good, in my opinion. So we start off with a Star Wars-esque title scroll that lays out the basic plot of the film, kind of like a 5th grade reading report on the movie. And we learn that international civilization is flourishing, and as it's flourished and we've explored, we needed police in space, and so that's what our story is about. We've got a galactic police vessel that is in some ways ribbed for her pleasure, and in others very much not.
Hey, fun fact: the ship is actually based off of a Jerusalem artichoke. The director went to the grocery store and then came back and showed the guys who did the models, hey, a ship should look like this.
And it does.
All right.
Now, like, in the movie's defense, like, I watched a very different version of this than everyone else, apparently, because I rented it on YouTube, and that was I'm guessing, ripped directly from VHS that they decided to put up, and the rest of you guys found it for free on YouTube through a channel called Film X that had a very good-looking high-definition version.
Yeah, like 1080p resolution version.
Yeah, so that ship looked like complete ass to me. And now that I'm seeing a high-definition version of it, they actually made a good model there. Like,
yeah. So you were thinking the ship was used as like a butt plug.
I don't think it's a butt plug, Bill.
I don't know
It's
about
there to
that.
the base, but... So yeah, we join the ship, the Infinity, and its crew of intrepid policemen, starting with a cowboy private who's dressed like a cowboy and likes the Dodgers for some reason. There aren't really uniforms in the Space Police, I don't think.
Except for this one.
The sergeant behind him is aggressively doing crunches, and we will see him aggressively doing crunches through most of this movie, and he will be extremely sweaty through most of this movie. Also, I didn't have him pegged as main character. I had him pegged as dies early on because he was an asshole to everyone. But no, this is the main love interest that we meet, and boy, is he a piece of work. And boy, is the private just, the dumbest.
I would have loved to have him be a red shirt and get killed off early.
I'm glad everyone lived, because everyone brought something to this. I'm not saying what they
private
necessarily, but
all right.
Anyway, so they find a ship that they are suspicious of and want to pull over. They turn on the sirens, and the sergeant points out that, of course, the ship isn't going to pull over because he can't hear their sirens in space. And then they basically get told to mind their own business, and then the captain shows up, who is, and I mean, think kind of Dom DeLuise type character. Like, the captain was legitimately funny. He was chewing the scenery and having a great time with it.
He's one of the only ones that could really act.
Yeah, so the captain was really well known at this time, the actor who played him, for comedic commercials. Yeah. So it's like, it further emphasizes that this was supposed to be a parody, because they brought this guy who actually has comedic timing and draw for the, like, everyone in America would have known who he was at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that brings a different kind of context when you understand that.
Like, this was way more Mel Brooks than this was a Mel Brooksian production. Like, when I said it's kind of comparable to Star Wars, or not Star Wars, but Spaceballs, that's kind of what I was thinking, like, when we got into the scene that's on the screen right now. And we'll get to that soon. Anyway, so the captain is a goofball, and this whole movie, I'm like, guys, is this a porn? You have to tell me if I'm watching a porn. It's the law. But, I mean, look at this scene. This scene right here, that's porn parody, right?
You would never guess that these were people in space on a spaceship, police officers on a spaceship, ensuring the safety of the galaxy.
Right.
But,
with an android who's been given feelings for whatever reason, which I feel like guys would be the last person or last group to give space outpost droids feelings.
Well, right. I want to come back to this scene because the sergeant, the guy in the bowl cut, raises a really good question at this point. But rewinding a little bit, they get in a space fight, or a little space battle with the guy who they were chasing, and he's kind of in this weird Darth Vader mask. And they get their butts thoroughly kicked, and they're just like, "Oh, don't worry about it. He just didn't respect us and wanted to slow us down. We're not worth killing."
Don't want an intergalactic war.
Yeah. Then we find out that they have a Rock Eater prisoner on board who they abused for laughs for a few minutes, and that wasn't really great. That's the robot guy that they were fighting.
God.
Don't remember anyone's names because it doesn't matter.
Oric from Mordric.
Mork from Orc, basically.
Yeah, it's a Mork and Mindy reference.
Yeah. It's another parody thing. I'm okay with that. But yeah, they lose to him. We find out they have a prisoner that they abuse. That's the prisoner they abuse, a Rock Eater. And then we go to that. We meet the rest of the crew, who's guy with ears and wings glued onto his face and back, and a racial stereotype that I don't feel we should show in this episode.
Too late.
The Chinese guy?
Yeah.
You didn't find that just a little?
Yeah, yeah. It was not good. He's all he does is
quote Confucius.
Yeah. Speak in weird little rhymes. That was.
It's the 80s.
The cheapest way to do a Chinese character at the time.
It's the 80s.
Who seems to have opium on board.
Yeah.
Oh, no, seems to. Because in this part right here, he takes a big old drag off of it and then doesn't exhale anything and goes, solid stuff.
Yeah. I was being facetious.
No, I kind of thought that they just didn't have the budget. Like, they were smoking plenty of joints, but I don't know if they had the budget or expertise to make that thing work. So yeah, then we get to the dinner scene, where they're, I think, served pills on plates.
Yes!
And go, ooh, I'm stuffed.
Dinner is a pill.
We sexually harass Galaxina for a little while. That wasn't great. And then the captain eats an egg.
A strange egg.
A strange egg, but
which he cracks open into a glass, and it just comes out in like glops.
Yeah. But he does raise a good point here when he's like, if we worried about where eggs came from, would any of us eat them?
I suppose.
And you bring up Spaceballs. This predates Spaceballs by 7 years. Spaceballs was released in 1987,
Yeah.
so they were attempting to make a joke off the aliens, kind of the same thing before then.
Yep.
So the alien pops out of his mouth after he
Runs around.
after he drinks the egg juice. He starts having all these convulsions because it's not agreeing with him internally as this thing's growing into a baby lizard, I guess. And in this scene, they're punching him in the gut, which forces the alien to come up out of his mouth and land on the ground and dash off into the dark recesses of the ship.
I mean, that was solid slapstick. They had several bits in this scene that, like the stuff with where where the sergeant is lusting after Galaxina is uncomfortable, but it's, I mean, nothing I haven't seen in 100 animes.
Okay.
Well, it's a trope. We don't need to get into it. But like the bit where they're kicking the crap out of him, that's solid slapstick.
Yeah.
And like the captain had a really good joke, or a couple really good jokes in this part, and the sergeant brings up a really good point. Like they're talking about Galaxina and how it would just be wrong for anyone to even want to have sex with her since she's a robot. And the sergeant's like, why would they make her that way then if we are on a spaceship, everyone's a dude, and we haven't seen anyone for years? Why did they make her like that then? And I'm just like, why indeed? Anyway, so that's we go from here to the sergeant, I think, once again sexually harassing Galaxina. Or no, that might have been later. Either way, they get then they get a call from Space High Command, and the colonel orders them off to a planet to look for the blue star.
Very Monty Python.
Yeah, anytime anyone says the blue star for the rest of the show, they will then go, oh, and everyone will look up. And
heavenly chorus, if you will.
Yeah. And they're told that this trip will take them 27 years to make because they don't have a hyperdrive. And when the captain says, "Thank you, sir, for this great honor," he's like, "It's not an honor. You were the closest ship. Bye."
Right.
And so they're off to a night at the Galaxy brothel with a whole bunch of weird aliens for a bunch of weird sex. And this was kind of their excuse to raid the costume closet at whatever studio produced this, and for the makeup artist to go completely crazy. And yeah, if it weren't for the boobs in this scene and the last, this would be rated PG-13. If it weren't for the extremely standard swearing, it would be rated PG. I'm not sure we should be show. Well, I guess the movie showed this on on YouTube, so we're not for children.
Right.
This is an After Dark episode.
Well, everybody has boobs. I mean, it's not like we're showing people things they haven't seen.
So the challenge was when they were editing this, one day the studio would say, make it R. And then the next day the studio will come back and say, make it PG. And then they'd come back the next day and say, make it R again. So you can see the conflicts in the editing because of where they were drawn back and forth without much help, you know?
That makes a whole lot more sense. Yeah, this scene was definitely from an R-rated day. And, I mean, it's sex humor in the 80s. It's what it is. We made a lot of comedies in the 80s that have not aged well. But Galaxina is apparently watching this whole thing and liking it. I'm unsure.
And to give you fairness to the to the makeup artist, this was done by Christopher James Wallace, who's best known for the 1986's The Fly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, he's actually done some great effects like Enemy Mine and Gremlins and Return of the Jedi, and he was a model maker for E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The problem is, and the theme you see with this movie a lot, is that there was a lot of potential in the players, but the production company and the producers would come in and hamstring it. So like, hey, do this thing, but we need you to do it in like 20 days. Oh, so they had to reuse stuff and then rely on reusing stuff from other movies and then making up the gaps.
Like, yeah, I mean, it does feel kind of like a mixed production, but I mean, seeing the high def pictures, it had a whole lot more budget than I was assuming.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, right. So, important thing to know. When you touch, if you touch Galaxina, it shocks you or burns you. I
think it was a shock.
Yeah.
Shock.
Because he was stunned after he touched her, kissed her.
Yeah. So absolutely nothing important happens at the brothel, and then they get to the ship and go into cryo sleep. At which point we see our alien friend again as he comes in and messes with the settings on the captain's cryo sleep because it recognizes him. And then when they all wake up 27 years later, he looks like he's grown 5 years of hair. 5 years of extremely curly hair. But it has also is arguably dumber now, which
and during
harder
that time,
to do, but it's still funny. Nobody knows about the alien baby running around the spaceship yet. Now, presumably fully grown. And Galaxina has spent the last 27 years growing emotions and getting feelings for the sexual harassing sergeant guy.
Thor, and teaching herself how to speak.
Yeah, and apparently also making herself lingerie, as we see in this scene. That was
the
a
first half
question.
First half of the show, she couldn't speak. And in fact, she really hardly had an appearance at all in the first part of the show.
Yeah, and she wasn't supposed to. They make it clear that these robots are not for interaction with humans or anything in any way, shape, or form. So they don't speak, and you can't touch them. It made no sense, and it makes less sense why something like that would have packed lingerie on the ship. Maybe she ordered it from the
well, that she did say towards the end that there was a catalog that she could order parts from because he was asking about if she
we'll
was
get to
fully
we'll get to that.
Yeah. So I'm sure that was something she could order
and get delivered.
Maybe.
Hey.
I mean, this was a slow ship because it took them 27 years to get where they're going because they didn't have hyperlight travel like all of the newer ships.
Yeah.
They complained about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in 27 years, I was kind of just assuming she'd made it herself.
She could have that amount of time.
You've got a lot of time on your hands.
I mean, if she hadn't been focused on being more human, then she totally could have probably made it herself.
Right.
So, this is one of the scenes, like that scene where she comes in and is just lays it all out for Sergeant McHarassment Pants, who was once again doing really sweaty crunches.
Oh.
I don't know. But she comes in and I'm like, okay, this is the part of the porn where the sex happens.
Nope.
And then she just leaves after, and he's just like, mm.
And here's why. They could have nudity from other actors, but because she was a playmate and they had not released her magazine yet, by contract, they could not show any nudity on her.
Then why
Playboy
make this scene?
owned her nudity.
Why make this scene then? Why use her like this in the movie? It's so confusing.
It's a trap. It's a trap, Seth.
It's just confusing. Like this movie was made like it wanted to be a porn.
Yeah.
It would have been better as a porn.
I think it would have been a perfect porn parody. Like, if they could have gone fully the way what they wanted with the movie and just like had it be beyond R, they wouldn't have had any of the confusing like PG stuff where they were trying to hold jokes back or whatnot. They could have gone all the way. Like, the bits that were parody were actually funny. This scene was crazy out of place.
Okay.
So Dark Helmet comes and sneak attacks them, and their ship has to crash land on the planet where they all get whiplash. So they have to send Galaxina out with fuzzy boots. Who knows why? And she found this is apparently an Earth penal colony where there aren't many humans. And here we can, like, there's the Batmobile, Bill. You pointed that out earlier.
Yeah.
Again, reusing stock because they had to, like, punch this out as quickly as possible.
Well, but also, why the Batmobile? I just don't get it.
Because we do this in like these referential parodies. There will be little things sprinkled throughout, just so that like the people watching can go, ooh, the thing. Like if we'd gone to see this in the theater in 1980, we would have all been like, oh, the Batmobile! They got the Batmobile in there because we just got done watching Batman on TV.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, when you look at it like that, like the Batmobile there makes a whole lot more sense because it was put there for fans, like people they assumed would be going to see this movie.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but it's a really, we go to the human restaurant, and we can kind of see, like, the human restaurant isn't referring to the people who go there. Was the joke?
Menu.
Yeah, it's the menu, and the low quality version I watched, I legitimately could not read this menu. I had no idea what was on here.
The more you scroll down, there's definitely one that's like fruit of the womb. Yeah.
Oh no!
Come on. Eskimo under people pie, like Eskimos are not people.
I know, right?
Baked Alaskan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bad. Very, very bad.
No, these are solid cannibal puns.
Yes.
And it's not cannibal because these are all aliens eating people here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Poached legs on toast, stir-fried innards. I mean, it's legit.
I did laugh a little bit at the knuckle sandwich because
yes,
it really was.
This is your type of humor, Bill. This is wordplay. Come on. These are puns, and they're actually good puns.
Right.
Like, Mel Brooks would have been happy to use this in any of his movies.
Ground earlobe for people that keep their ear to the ground.
No.
So, Galaxina goes there, and she's looking for some guy
having lady fingers, by the way. Did you notice this guy was eating lady fingers in your...
Yeah. But, so she's looking for a Mr. Future who has the blue star. Oh! and it turns out he was eaten several weeks ago.
Oh,
Missed it by that much.
But the blue star is still in his room, so she goes up there and finds the blue star in his room, and the robot bad guy's there. Dark Helmet, not TM. And he also wants the blue star so that he can rule the galaxy somehow, maybe, whatever.
Oh, you got to talk about Spot, Mr. Spot.
Mr. Spot, yeah.
Spot. That's with a T. Like,
yeah.
No.
And I mean,
he kind of has like dog-like ears, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are like Yoda ears almost.
I think it was supposed to look like dog ears, so Spot.
Okay. So he's the first Mog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Half man, half dog. He's his own best friend. But yeah, so Dark Helmet's in the room. Galaxina, I think, tricks / seduces him. I was unclear. But she tricks him, she bonks him on the head, she takes the blue star, and then they have a high noon showdown outside. That was super weird. And then she gets kidnapped by a biker gang, which are not making any more sense at this point. They worship the sun, Harley David's son, which they have one of. They were all of Earth's biker gangs were sent to this planet, apparently, and they formed a cult.
Around
and
one
with
motorcycle.
Blue Star, they will rule this planet.
It was.
Oh, wait, the galaxy!
There's the motorcycle, and there they are dancing around it.
Now, they did not look like they were having fun dancing in this scene.
No.
But
they have to stay hard, Seth. Stay hard.
But let's see. Galaxina is tied up there at the top of the water tower, and this is when the bumbling idiots from the ship come in to save her and drive off. Yeah, so they went through a whole costume change here that makes no sense.
Right. And they stole the biker's god, Harley David's son.
That she has to tell them how to drive because they're not used to combustion engines.
Right.
And they manage to. They get back to the ship where they find Lord Dark Helmet has taken over the ship because he self-repaired or has a good mechanic. And so he's taken over the ship, has the blue star, locks them all in the
prison cell,
same dungeon with the Rock Eater prisoner. These two start making out, and the other people are getting high. And it's real weird. And we find out those two are talking, and he's like, "Oh, if only we could have sex." And she's like, "Don't worry, I can order that part out of a catalog." And then they go back to making out some more. And then for some reason, he stops, and he's really sad, and he's like, "Oh, we can't have kids." And she's like, "Don't worry, we can order that out of the same catalog." Like that. The joke made that right there. Like, I thought that was legitimately humorous. Come on, guys.
Yes, Amazon.
Right.
I think we mean Bamazon. Bam. But so none of these guys are gonna save the day.
No.
The kids or the captain's alien parasite has snuck into Lord Dark Helmet's room, and through a weird slapstick sequence gets in the captain's chair, and then when Lord Dark Helmet goes to sit down again, literally bites his ass off and then kills him.
Short circuits him.
And that's the movie.
Hooray!
Yeah.
So
classic.
I feel like this was a cautionary tale to any filmmakers. So they were given 20 days to film this parody. And when they had to start shooting, LA had the worst weather that is seen in decades, and they lost 3 days of filming to rain. And basically, like this common theme that I said keeps coming up, the producers came in and ripped random pages out of the script. Supposedly, the story is that these were story pages that had jokes and continuity details to help with the continuity and pace.
Yeah.
And they were told, make it work. We'll fix it in the editing room.
Yep.
Because we're not giving you those days back to film. So they had to film this in 17 days. And it's like, it's a cautionary tale. And I think there's one of many. Like another one I think of is Knights of Badassdom, which was a parody, a really well like concept parody of D&D and live action and stuff. But the producers hamstringed it because they wanted to shorten it and said, make do. Because they were more worried about money than the vision. So if you get a chance to make a film, stick to your guns, even if you have to take out a loan. Don't let them hamstring you, because there's a good chance you probably have something great and the producers are going to fuck it up.
Yep.
Like this is definitely a bad movie. It's not a good movie. But
there was potential.
There was a core of something there. They had, like, the guy who played the captain, he was genuinely funny at this. They had a good guy for this type of movie. And he might have even been in other Mel Brooks films. Like, I swear he seems really familiar.
He's been in a number of movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, has watched it, and he said that he would love to see a remake of Galaxina, modern remake of it with, appropriate parody type film, sci-fi
and porn
type. Yeah, maybe and porn. Yeah.
He specifically mentioned the porn.
Yeah. Fair.
But here's what it's going to boil down to for my review. If you told me that we were going to watch a movie and it was either going to be Rebel Moon or this, I would windmill slam this so fast it would boggle your mind. Like, they did in 17. They made a better movie in 17 days with random pages torn out of the script, production interference, and all of this crap than Zack Snyder could do with all of Rebel Moon's budget and cast power.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what's kind of cool too. Like, as much as there's tropes, like sexual harassment tropes and everything, apparently it was a really good set. Like, Dorothy Stratten was really well taken care of. She enjoyed it. There was a big time director who was making another movie that was supposed to start filming after this one, and he wanted her to not do it because he's like, I want to be the one to find you. I mean, ultimately he becomes her lover when she starts filming the other film, but like, she was like, no, I told them I would do this and I'm all in. And she really gave it her all, and they had a great filming environment. He tried to, after her death, accuse it of it being a toxic and terrible set, but it wasn't the case at all. Like, there was nothing but these really positive things that was said about her as an actress, and what they like, making the lemons into lemonade, which kind of add to how sad it is of what happened to her.
Yeah, and we should probably maybe go into that a little bit. So after we watched Galaxina, Linda and I both watched Star 80, which was a movie made about Dorothy Stratten's life. And it was actually quite interesting. It's a very tragic tale. Of course, she ended up falling in love with the director on the next film that she was going to do. And she had been married
To a foreign national who found her at a Dairy Queen when she was a teenager and was the one to convince her to start doing nudes and go to Hollywood.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he used her as a pay ticket, like a meal ticket, because he could not work with his visa.
Yep.
Yeah, and his name was Paul Schneider, and he was pretty well known by the police where they ended up living. The police considered him to be a pimp, actually.
He was so
just a
terrible.
sneeze.
Like,
that?
here's the thing. It goes back to how the Galaxina director and crew tried to protect Dorothy Stratten, because they could see when he would show up on set every day, he froze her. Like, she was terrified.
Right. Yeah.
They found a way to make sure he couldn't come on the set so she could do her job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this guy was obviously an abuser who had tight reins on her.
Yeah. And I thought it was pretty good casting. They had Cliff Robertson played Hugh Hefner. And I thought he did a really good job in the show. And they did a great job. Eric Roberts played the part of Paul Schneider, which was Dorothy Stratton's husband in the movie. And they did a great job of painting him as being a real sleazeball. And he kept trying to worm his way into the Playboy Mansion, even when he wasn't with Dorothy, even when she was away on filming. And Hugh Hefner finally put the word out that he was not allowed in because he was such a sleazeball. And anyway, she started in this movie. She started working on this next film with this other director. They kind of fell in love. She decided she wanted to leave Paul Schneider, and the director reportedly told her, "You don't need to go see him again. Don't promise me you won't go see him again. Don't interact with him. This can all be done remotely." But he talked her into coming, and she went to his house. And it was interesting because the movie was actually filmed in the very house where she was murdered.
Which is awful. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it was weird. The murder scene, he killed her, raped her. He had like a sex bondage chair that he tied her into, and there were obviously a lot of bloody fingerprints on her body from her being in that chair. And then she was dead for an hour before he took his own life.
He just killed himself too. Yeah.
So
yeah, they
E200th episode, everyone.
yeah, apparently from the autopsy, there's no telling if she was raped before or after her death.
Right.
And it's just one more example in Hollywood, unfortunately, one of many where women, became famous while attached to these very toxic men, which is overused. I think this was legitimately a terrible human being.
Yeah.
And when they try to get away, they're killed.
Yeah.
So just a little interesting tidbit for Star Trek fans. If you look at the cast of Star 80, down on the bottom row there, third in from the left, you'll notice Robert Picardo played the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager. And he was in this movie.
Poor guy.
Younger, but still bald. He played an interviewer for a newspaper. So when she was going on a lot of her press junkets after she got announced as Playboy Playmate, he was one of the interviewers at one of the events. So that was kind of fun, seeing a familiar face in a role that we don't usually associate with him. But yeah, so and when she was killed, so the director that she was romantically involved with at the time was Peter Bogdanovich, which people will probably recognize the name from Sopranos. He was in The Sopranos. But anyway, he was completely distraught when he found out that happened. And interestingly, a number of years later, he ended up marrying um, his Playboy lover's sister.
Yeah, so as soon as she died, he started paying for the sister to get private schooling and all of these special lessons and blah blah. She's 7 years younger than what her sister was. And then like marries her. The marriage only lasts 13 years. Like this guy was obsessed. And he even went out of his way to write a biography that claimed Hefner raped her. Well, he couldn't say that explicitly because Hefner was going to go after him for, making crap up. And so he had to say seduced her. And then that's where he also claimed that she was abused on the set of the Galaxina, specifically citing the scene where she was tied up. And the director and the cast came back and said, no, like we had someone who was standing behind there holding the rope. And every time there was a break in the scene, we let it go. We let her rest. Like we were very concerned and considerate of Dorothy because we all loved her. She was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So that book was an absolute failure and like kind of muddied his name to Hollywood.
Good.
Yeah. So it was an interesting movie to watch. I'd never seen it or even heard of it until started looking for something for us to review for our 200th episode, and I'm like, Galaxina, how have I never heard of this? And so I'm like, well, let's watch this. And then I was like, maybe I should have picked something else. As we're about 15 to 20 minutes in, I'm like, but yeah, it was interesting.
15 to 20 minutes in is when I actually got into it a little bit.
Yeah, that's where it finally started coming around a little bit.
Like Jenna said, it's a parody, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I was curious. We were chatting with each other on our Discord channel about the movie, and Jenna and Stu, which you guys that are frequent viewers of the show will probably remember Stu Burns. We have him on periodically to chat with us, but they were talking about the background story of all this, Dorothy Stratten's life, which I wasn't familiar with either. And so I started looking into it, and I'm like, oh man, there's some movie about this. Let's watch the movie. So we did. It was very interesting. Quite a tragic tale for sure.
Yeah.
So another reason for drinking is, you start with Galaxina and you're like, oh, this is terrible. Oh, let's lubricate this. And then you get to the biography and you're like, this is even worse.
Yeah, right.
I watched Galaxina stone cold sober. And now that I'm drunk, I'm like, no, that was fun. I do that again.
Here's the thing. Like, it was one of the first movies, and I think this is where it should be appreciated in sci-fi history, to really try and look at like Aliens and Star Trek and Star Wars, and these are such big films. Let's laugh about it, because like I said, Spaceballs didn't come out till 1987.
And they compared it to like Barbarella. It was supposed to be like Barbarella. So.
Yeah.
But Barbarella, I thought, was much better. I mean, granted, not maybe not much better, but
I think Barbarella probably had a much better production than this one did.
Much more money.
And I think if this one had had a good production, we would have gotten a much more coherent and funny movie.
Yeah, probably.
But look how long ago Barbarella happened before this. That was 1968. So it had been a hot minute. Since a legitimate sci-fi parody, and not one that would combine and on the successes of Alien, Star Wars, Star Trek. I mean, there was this whole new wave of sci-fi that was ripe for taking advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair.
I mean, there were some scenes that definitely didn't work, and there were some scenes that were legitimately funny.
And that's why, like, I go back to the producers, the company worried about money is what really hamstring this. And now it's like if you want to make a movie, take advantage of the technology we have that you can really film some amazing quality stuff and just do it yourself. Make the film that you want to make to the level that you think is great for you, because there's a good chance you have a better understanding of what your audience wants than these a-holes worried about bean counting, and do something awesome.
Right.
That's the seed of hope I take from this for our audience.
Like,
It sounds like Jenna wants to make a movie.
the model work on Galaxina is, now that I can see those high def pictures, is actually really impressive for the time. I assumed, like, from my low def version of what I could see, that it was extremely low budget, but someone took some real time, talent, and care in making that.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Like, if it weren't shaped like a dick, it could go on any sci-fi show and be pretty respectable as a model with a little bit better background effects. But I mean, once again, I think now, like, looking at it like this, the background effects were exactly what they wanted. They wanted low quality cheesy to go, like, combine with that.
Yep.
Like, when I was watching it in low def, I was very unimpressed. Watching it in high def, I think I might be a little more impressed because of the craft on display.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, some of that 80s humor probably hit a whole lot better in the 80s.
Now I'm wondering what versions Chris watched.
Oh.
Well, hopefully he watched the free version.
Yeah, hopefully the same version I did.
Yeah, right.
But I definitely think if you want to say you love sci-fi and sci-fi cinematic history, it is something worth exploring when you consider where it fits in the timeline, like versus Barbarella versus Spaceballs.
Yeah, definitely.
Like there was not a lot of parodies out, and this, like, when you look at the argument, let us make a sci-fi parody film, the context was right for it.
Yeah.
Like, Spaceballs in no way copies off of the movie, but you can definitely see, like, the concept of Spaceballs there. Like, it's got kind of that heart of Spaceballs, of poking fun at the sci-fi tropes of the time and the good ones that had come before it. Does it do it anywhere near as good as Spaceballs? No. But I mean, it's I would willingly watch this again, and I would want to be nice and drunk while doing it, because I think that would enhance the enjoyment. I don't think this is one to take too seriously.
Enjoy that, Seth.
That might have been Linda's and my problem, because we watched it totally sober.
Yeah, I did too, but some of the jokes got me. Like, I love that old slapstick. I love Mel Brooks's movies with the physical humor and those weird running puns. The thing where every time they said the blue star and went, it was getting old, because as all the main cast characters just went with it. But then when the bad guy goes, "What the fuck is that?" And every time he's just like, every time it happens after that, he's like, "Who's doing that?" Made that enhanced the joke. And then at the very end, when they say the blue star and nothing happens, and everyone's like,
because here's the thing, like
Holy Grail, 3 beats.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail is 1975, and even though it's not explicitly called out in the Wikipedia or whatever as a reference in this, like, that's absolutely the Holy Hand Grenade, and then the Holy Grail, they had that.
Whoa.
So like, it's there. The really the tongue-in-cheek people who knew and understood comedy. I would have loved to have seen what those pages were that were ripped out.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, in my notes, when I was ragging on it, in the beginning, especially, I had thought that I was kind of watching something that wanted to be more serious. And that might be because of the confused production, that it took a while, and Jenna just going, dude, it's a parody, for me to go, oh, it's a parody. And then I started looking at different things differently.
Yeah.
And more of the jokes started landing. The costumes went from being cheap to at least being silly intentionally.
In the brothel, the one little exchange I liked was at the end when they're leaving, and Madam Kitty says to Captain Butt, "Next time you pass my house, I'll appreciate it." And he says, "I've had a wonderful time, but it wasn't tonight."
There was some solid wordplay
in
this movie. Like, if you're paying attention, so there's some subtle jokes. There's more obvious jokes, but they had some good jokes in here.
Yeah.
And some of that 1980s sexual humor does not age well. But some of it still does. Like, I legitimately enjoyed the scene where they were beating the crap out of the captain. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, you can actually go out and find a number of the quotes out on the internet from the movie. They've got that movie's quotes, and they've even got some from the Asian guy that was in was it the engine room smoking?
Yeah.
Sam Woe, I guess, was the character's name. So. But yeah, if you're interested in some of his Confucius-like sayings, you can find those. Yeah.
Oh, they had him actually quoting actual Confucius.
Oh,
apparently.
Oh, sure.
Well, this one said, there's one quote. He says, "Robot woman like clock, pretty face, pretty hands, pretty movement, but hard to regulate when she get out of order."
Obviously, that's not. But still.
Obviously not a Confucius quote.
Confucius was ahead of his time.
Yes.
Surprisingly so.
Right.
Also, aliens did visit us back in the past, so he probably talked to them.
Right.
So we would definitely say, if we were to go around this room, I would say it's worth watching with a bunch of your friends, slightly under the influence of your choice.
Or heavily.
Just to really experience the context of 1980s sci-fi.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that it is 1980s.
Right.
You really got to in some parts.
So much cocaine, I'm sure.
But that said, don't expect a Star Wars type of quality.
No. Set your expectations low. Like, real low.
Really low.
And then let yourself be a little impressed.
Right. All right. What? You going to say something else?
No.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, hope you enjoyed our 200th episode special. Can't believe we've done 200 of these, guys. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Seems like it's always a fun time discussing these movies with you guys. So hopefully we'll have another 200 under our belt before we'll get together, and maybe we'll do another Galaxina watch for our 400th episode.
Episode 400, Galaxina 2.
There you go. The remake.
So you're saying Chris is going to remake that film? I'm ready for that. My body is ready.
There we go.
We got to get Chris to start pushing for it online.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.